So welcome to the January 28th meeting, the Planning Policy Commission. Tonight, because of the governor's continued request, this meeting will be held remotely. There will be a public hearing tonight, so if anybody would like to call in, the information is on the agenda. Once you get in, dial *3 and wait for your name to be called. So first thing I'm going to do is, Kristen, would you take the roll?
Yes, I will. Commissioner Voice?
Here.
Commissioner Zaragoza?
Here.
Commissioner Monahan?
Here.
Commissioner Fall?
Here.
Commissioner Lewis?
Here.
Commissioner Carl?
Here.
Commissioner Milligan?
Here.
And Chair Probola?
Here.
All present.
I assume that we will be voting on the agenda, the comp plan amendments this evening. That's why I did the agenda, the roll call. First thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the January 14th meeting. So does anybody have any comments, changes? Nothing? So with that, I will consider the minutes to be approved. So before we have our public hearing on the proposed changes for the comp plan, I do want to add that Deputy City Administrator Andrea Snyder is on the call. Did I miss anybody else from the city besides Andrea? Okay, so first of all, we're going to have a short presentation from Senior City Planner Kristen Leeson about the proposed amendments to the comp plan and the zoning map. So Kristen, take it away.
Okay, let me share my presentation. Okay, are we good?
We're good.
All right, so I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson here too. So we are talking about the proposed, or the docket of 2021 proposed comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments. And here's kind of the timeline and process that not just we follow this year, but we follow every year. So either by January 31st or the last Thursday in January, we must hold a public hearing and make a recommendation on the docket. In February, it goes to City Council and they take action on the docket. And then from March through August, the staff works on the proposed amendments. June through September, typically, the Planning Policy Commission will review the draft amendments. And then September and October, we hold a public hearing. And then November is a council study session and December is council action. It does have to be done within the calendar year. So a little background, as a reminder, in 1990, the Growth Management Act was adopted. And part of what the Growth Management Act said was that counties must plan. They must plan overarching visions, goals, and policies for the county, and they must be consistent with GMA goals. Cities within those counties must also plan, and they also must have overarching goals, visions, and policies for the cities and be consistent with both the county and the GMA goals. So GMA has 14 goals. It looks like a lot more here, but I counted. It is 14. And every one of these topics is addressed in our comprehensive plan. So we have as our elements in our comprehensive plan, we have land use, housing, transportation, utilities and public services, community facilities, parks and open space and trails, and economic development. Those elements by themselves cover what's required by GMA. We have also added human services and cultural elements to our plan. So the plan may only be amended once a year. This is so that it ensures that everything is being looked at comprehensively, and you don't just start adding things, and things have to make sense together. So just once a year. There are some exceptions, but since I've been here, we have not had those. The docket must be approved prior to starting the amendment process, as I said, to assure a holistic consideration. So the docket, though, is not amendments. It's just a list of things. And we ask you and we ask council, does this list of things look relevant? Does it look necessary? And if they look good, then we'll go and we'll start the research process and begin the amendment process. So starting our docket, this year, proposed on there, we have Table L2, Units Toward 2031 Adopted State Housing Target, and Table L5, Population and Household Projections. So each year, we work with the Office of Financial Management. They ask us for things like all permits issued, and primarily residential permits. So all residential permits issued, all residential permits completed, anything that was canceled, anything that expired, anything that was permitted from, it'll be 2012, that was issued in 2012 that was permitted, that was completed later. We give them that information, and then they come back with us with the total number of housing units that we have and estimated population and household targets or household projections. So that's how we get those numbers that go in the comprehensive plan. Those are not available to us until June, the end of June, which is why we don't come to you guys until later in the year. The next one is jobs. Same kind of things. We have our state mandated job targets, just like we have state mandated housing targets. We get these from, we get these also from the state. They lag though a year behind and are not available until June either. So again, that's why the numbers come later. Our remaining land supply and capacity. These are numbers that are done about every 8 years or so. Last time we did it was in 2014, but it was not nearly as in depth as we're doing now. What we do is we look at how much vacant and redevelopable land we have. Vacant land is either vacant or what is on that property is worth $10,000 or less. And then redevelopable, either it has critical areas over 50% of it, or it is not developed to the maximum that the land is allowed to be developed. So we're going through that process right now and don't quite have the numbers back from King County. And then there is going to be a climate change plan developed this year. And so we're going to work with Megan and others who are working on that plan to make sure that everything is consistent, our goals and policies. So redesignations and rezones. We have several that are being requested by the city this year to be designated as community facilities because they are either parks or open space. So the first one is actually an existing park in South Cove that was dedicated to the city. It's been used as a park for a long time. It is currently low density residential designation and a single family small lot zoning. And the designation being requested is community facilities, and the land use being requested is zoning being requested is community facilities recreation. The next two parcels are part of the Gateway or Anthology development up here on Newport Way. It's about 400 apartments that are up there. They dedicated land to the city. So the one that is labeled B is actually going to be used for recreation, and the one that is C will be used for open space. They are currently zoned village residential. And then these are formerly known as the Bergsma properties. The proposed name is the Harvey Manning Park Expansion. These were purchased by the city, I believe, in 2017, and to be used as permanent open space. So they're all being proposed. They're currently zoned single-family estates and single-family suburban. They're being proposed solely as community facilities open space. And there may be some park benches or some overlooks, that kind of thing, but otherwise it'll be left open space. Here's a new one for you. I received an application yesterday from a private property owner who would like to rezone this parcel, which is just under an acre, 0.81 acres. It is currently single-family suburban, and the property owner is requesting multifamily medium. So that will be added to the docket. Either way, it will go to council. So the Old Town Sub-Area Plan, as many of you know, we updated our Old Town Sub-Area Plan in 2018. We added an action program to it, and we're going to update that action program a little bit because now some of those things can't be done or may need to be altered just a little bit. And then we have an implementation status chart that we adopted last year that also needs to be updated because we've completed a few more things. So we need to make sure people know about that. Capital facilities element, our very eagle-eyed Parks Director noticed that there were some things missing that should have been on here years ago. So we are going to update our, now it's called Public Facilities Map, excuse me, to include the community center, pool, senior center, and Pickering Barn. And lastly, as you all know, the Planning Policy Commission's bulk of your work this year will be our Title 18 update. And there will probably be some comprehensive plan amendments that need to go along with that. So we are going to make sure that everything is consistent and change what needs to be changed. So you have a few options tonight. We will have a public hearing and we're hoping for a recommendation. There are a few options. One is to approve the docket as it is presented. Another is to approve the docket with changes. And the last one is to just not approve the docket. So our recommendation is to approve, recommend approval of the docket as presented. But while you're talking about it, are there any amendments that need to be made this year that are not included on the docket currently? Are there amendments that aren't relevant or necessary? And are there any refinements that need to be made to the amendments that have been, to the proposed amendments that have been presented? Okay, so that, I think, oh, timing next steps. Nope, that was an extra slide. So that's all I have. Yeah.
Thanks, Kristen. That was a great presentation. I'd like to know if you want me to open the public hearing first and then have you discuss anything. Actually, I think that's what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is, I know there's some questions in the chat and we'll get to them. But I'm going to open the public hearing at 6:44 and ask Kristen if there's anybody that has been signed up to speak.
There is no one who has signed up to speak, and there is no one on the line that is here to speak.
Okay. Since hearing and seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:45. Even though it hasn't been a minute, it'll be closed at 6:45. And open it up for discussion. And the first question in the chat room is from Commissioner Nina.
Thank you. This is Nina Milligan. Thank you, Chair Probola. I have a question for Kristen about that last item on the rezoning list that you said came in yesterday. And just wondered if you could explain for me and anyone else how the public hearing and the packet coming out the week before, but it wasn't in the packet, and is what other opportunities do people have to speak on that in particular?
So applications and proposals for comprehensive plan rezones are allowed to be submitted until the public hearing. So that's part of the purpose of tonight's meeting, is that if there was something else, they could add it, because our advertisement says including but not limited to. So this is their last opportunity to add things to the docket. There are other opportunities to speak. This will go to City Council on February 16th. And then if it does get on the docket, if that continues through the process, there are opportunities through the amendment process to comment on the proposal.
I have a question from Commissioner Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Joy Lewis here. Can you remind us, Kristen, about community facilities open space and exactly what is allowed in that? It's really nice to see Bergsma properties on our comp plan this year. I just want to remind us, like, can the city put up a facilities, maintenance shed, for instance, or just exactly what? Can you remind us exactly what open space entails?
So I'm going to expand on that a little bit and just clarify that we have 3 different community facility zones, and they all start with community facilities. One has hyphenation facilities, another one is recreation, and another one is open space. So community facilities will actually allow for things like community centers, utilities to go on there, roads will go there, detention ponds go there, that kind of thing. Community facilities recreation is essentially a park space. So you can have restrooms, you can have merry-go-rounds, you can have dog parks, all sorts of things associated kind of with recreation. And then the open space is very, very limited. Trails, park benches, I believe that trails, park benches, picnic tables, overlooks. I think that there are some limited utilities that can go there. I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure. But the purpose is to leave it as natural as possible.
Thank you. Yeah, if you can just double check, because I do remember that open space did allow for some type of maintenance utility shedding, and I just wanted to clarify when we do address this that we have what that is. But I am very happy to see this designation. It's what we wanted.
So we have a question from Commissioner Fall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Commissioner Fall. 2 questions. The first one is regards to the proposed parcels for redesignation. Parcel A is they want to move it from single-family small lot to community facilities recreation. The question that I have is, yes, I know that it is an existing park right now. Is that owned by the city, or is that owned by the homeowners association?
I would have to double check, but I believe it was designated to the city.
Okay, because is there property tax being paid on it? And if there is, would going to community facilities recreation then remove that property tax obligation from the homeowners association, assuming that is how it's set up presently? So that's the question. And then is there a benefit? If that's the case, there is being property tax being paid on that parcel. Is there a benefit to moving it to community facilities recreation, or is that actually a detriment? And then my second question is regards to the new parcel change that was brought tonight. What is the location of that parcel? I saw it on the map, but I couldn't actually identify where that is located.
So let me pull that up again. Oh, there we go. Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay. Let me try this. It's not working. There we go. Okay, so this property right here, this is another property. This is all Anthology at the Gateway property. So this is Newport Way right here. 90 runs along here. The Bergsma properties would be down sort of below here. Yeah, got Riva along here and Revel, all that new development, the apartment development. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so west of SR 900 between Newport, or just south of Newport Way. Okay. There we go. And as for your other question, Commissioner Fall, yes, I do believe that there is a benefit tax-wise in rezoning to community facilities.
For us, I mean, for the city or for the homeowners association?
Well, if it's already been dedicated to the city, it would be for the city.
Okay,
I will double check on that one then before it comes back.
okay.
So there was big discussion from the council when they were considering taking over Blackberry Park, which is that's the name of the park. And they've already taken it under consideration in the city and have already allocated certain funds to improve the park. I don't know anything about the tax benefits, but it has been taken over by the city. I watched the council prove it. I don't see any other questions. Any comments? Are you ready to vote on the proposed amendments? If you're ready to vote, could I have some shaking your head, some way to tell me that you're ready to vote? I need a motion to approve the comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments as presented by the city. Do I have a second? Oh, well, somebody has to make that motion. I can't.
Joan,
Madam
before
Chair.
that, do you mind if I make a comment or ask a question before you move forward? I had one more thing.
Well, you can, after we have a second, you can ask any question you want.
Okay.
So, do I have a motion? There's no motion, it dies.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the proposed docket of 2021 comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments as presented this evening by the city staff.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So, Commissioner Lewis, questions?
Thank you, Commissioner Joy Lewis. I had a question that I had brought up to staff, and I'm curious if we could talk a little bit about the stormwater management plan. When we saw this last year, we had some bigger plans about it. And due to COVID and staffing restrictions, we had to table it last year. And when I actually really like the comp plan. When you've been doing it for a little while, it's like an old friend, right? And you start to get excited about the things that we can do the year ahead. It's kind of like a little present, seeing what's happening. I was disappointed to not see the stormwater management plan on our docket. Typically, when we're in council chambers, we like to have a back and forth with staff. What kind of resources do you have? What would you need to be able to do this, right? We kind of pick apart and talk about what more could we do? And, we kind of compare to the last year. In pandemic times and given the kind of the number of openings that we have with staff, I think we're all pretty aware of the limitations that are going on right now. So I'm not going to jump into that discussion the way we traditionally do when we do this first meeting about the comp plan, but I would like to hear about the stormwater management plan and why specifically it isn't being brought to us this year into council.
So this is try it again. This is Kristen Leeson, Senior Planner. And hopefully Andrea will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that when I talked to him, it won't be done this year, the stormwater management plan. It won't be done until the beginning of 2022. So that therefore it couldn't go onto our plan this year, but it is in progress. Yeah. Next year.
Any more comments, questions? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor? Kristen, you have to take the roll.
Okay, Commissioner Boyce?
Aye.
Commissioner Zaragoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Monahan?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Commissioner Carl?
Aye.
Commissioner Milligan?
Aye.
And Chair Probola?
Aye.
That was it was 8 in favor. Unanimous.
Okay, so it passes. So the next thing on our agenda is something that's a little different that we really haven't done before. We're going to ask Deputy City Manager Snyder to lead us in a discussion on how we can make planning policy better for us, for the city, for the council, and obviously for the citizens of Issaquah. So I'm going to turn over the microphone and the share screen to Deputy City Administrator Snyder. Ooh, tongue-tied.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Kristen pulls up the presentation slides, yes, this is Andrea Snyder, the Deputy City Administrator, also serving as the interim Community Planning and Development Director while we recruit for that position. So, Joan, really almost any title at this point, I'll go by.
Well, I didn't want to confuse you with Kristen. So it's, anyway, we appreciate both of you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if you could go to the next slide, Kristen. Thank you. The purpose of this conversation, as Chair Probola mentioned, is really to discuss feedback that I heard from the one-on-one meetings that I had with our Planning Policy commissioners from last year, not our brand new faces we have around the table. But I sat down with all of the commissioners that are continuing into this year and just determined, ask them for feedback on what do they think we're doing well, what are the things that they think they would like to see improved. And so tonight I'd like to go over the themes of what I heard in terms of feedback and make sure that I heard you correctly. And if I didn't, definitely correct me. And then talk about where we go from here. And if there's anything else that we should be thinking about as we welcome our new members and proceed to tackle our work plan for the rest of the year. And Kristen, if you could go to the next slide, please. And the reason, back one, yeah, great. And the reason why we're asking these questions, first, it's always good to just kind of take a step back and take the temperature and see how we're doing. But in particular last year, there were a lot of changes and no surprise, right? 2020, the year of change and different things, but PPC in your own unique way. So for this commission, you were affected by some staff turnover. Longtime staff member Trish Hananen retired last year, and so your direct staff that you've been used to working with has changed. Some new faces, and there was also not a small amount of commissioner turnover. We had some commissioners who resigned their seats or let us know that they would be resigning from their seats in the future. And so, that made me take pause and see, okay, what's going on? Is there a trend in feedback? Is everything okay? And of course, virtual meetings was all new for all of our city council and commission and board meetings. And so it seems like a really good time to check in as we enter into what I hope is our final phase of the pandemic, to see, how we can improve things moving forward, and what it is that we might need to improve. Next, Kristen, thanks. So here's what I heard in terms of successes, and again, I'm talking about high-level themes. I'm not going to share every single bit of feedback that I heard from you, but here's the things that I found to be in common among many or most of you. So these are things that are going well, things that maybe we should keep doing. Closing the loop, providing updates on what happens to PPC's recommendations. So as you consider a policy or consider a code change and that goes to City Council, letting you know what happened with your recommendation. What was the discussion at Council like? did they change your recommendation, or did they wholeheartedly agree with your recommendation and move it forward? So that's something that we really tried to be more, that we tried to do more consistently and be more conscious about doing that last year, especially in the past, I'd say maybe 6 months of the year. And it's something that we've heard from you that that's been good, and we should do more of that and make sure that that's a regular part of the meeting. I heard from you that most of you can really feel your impact, and you feel like PPC has a positive role to play that makes a great impact in the community and how Issaquah is shaped in the future, which is fantastic. And I heard general agreement from you, from the various members, on what the purpose or the role of the Planning Policy Commission. What I heard from you is that you thought that your job was to improve upon things that typically staff brings forward. And, you know, I heard what that means. Some people said our job is to tear it apart and, and to make sure that the policies that we're considering are the right policies, that they solve the problems that need to be solved, that we're thinking of all the options, and really making sure that, you know, if staff are missing anything, or if the administration is missing anything, that you can point that out to us, which is a little bit different than starting from scratch and drafting a policy yourself. So that's what I heard from most of you. And then I also heard something that we're doing well is support and the staffing for the commission, that even though there's been a transition from somebody that you've worked with for a long time, I've heard positive things from you about Kristen and the staffing and support that you've received over the past year. And that's great. Thank you very much. We appreciate that sincerely. Next slide, please, Kristen. We talked about things to improve, things we can do better, things we should consider for the future. And things that we can do better include providing more background and context for the issues. So what's the history of this conversation, or what's the purpose? Why is this thing coming to PPC now? What problem is this trying to solve? And just giving a little bit more background and context. And then I also heard that commissioners want help with focusing the feedback by providing discussion or policy questions. That sometimes we might hand you a large document that's 70 pages long or even more, and you know, just handing that over to you and then saying, so what do you think? And that's a really hard way to open a conversation, really hard way to have a good, productive discussion around that. Because what I heard from you is that it's hard to determine what level of feedback that the administration is really seeking, what level of feedback is the City Council needing from you, and to help focus some of your review of those documents and policies, to help focus some of the discussions that occur in the meeting. And then I heard that similarly, as we hand over some of these large, long documents, that sometimes in the past we have not redlined those documents. So you might not be able to see what changes were occurring or what changes are recommended from version 1 to version 2. If you've given us feedback on something that you think this is the wrong direction, we've tried to fix it, it's not always evident in the packet what exactly we've changed. And so, and sometimes these documents are very long, and having to compare those versions without a redline version is difficult. I also heard that that it would be helpful to outline the PPC role on each agenda item versus council and other boards. So where do we need PPC's unique perspective and unique feedback, your unique criticism on each of these items, and what that looks like versus maybe what council might be considering or other boards. And certainly to let you know what that process looks like as it moves through different boards. And that's, I think, especially true as we look forward to the Title 18 updates, where multiple boards are involved in the review of some of these policies and some of these code items. At least that's what we anticipate. And then I heard concerns about future leadership of the group itself. So not necessarily from a staffing perspective, but that we should be really conscientious about who we recruit as members, how we decide, how the mayor decides to make those appointments, and just make sure that we continue to have a really great, productive, and thoughtful group. So those are the things that I heard that we can consider for the future, or things that we need to improve upon. Next slide, please. So now we get to the discussion and trying to practice some of the things that we've heard. I've provided some discussion questions to help focus the discussion today. So I would appreciate if you have any questions. Certainly let's handle those first. Otherwise, I really just want to take this time to open up the floor and say, you know, does this generally reflect the things that you feel are going well and the things you would like to see more of in the future? Excuse me for the typo, sorry about that. How is the virtual meeting format going? Are any changes that we should consider to make the virtual format work better? I hadn't heard anything from you when we had these feedback discussions, but I'd love, if you have any points to make on that, I'd love to hear them. And then as we look to help onboard our newest members, or the members we expect will join us mid-year, what else should we be thinking about to make sure that PPC is operating as you would like it to operate and serving the community in the best way it can? And finally, did we miss anything? What else haven't we talked about that we should talk about? And so with that, I'd turn it over to the commissioners for any questions you have or thoughts on any one of these questions.
So I generally liked everything you presented. I thought it was all appropriate and things that we've all, you know, over the years kind of discussed and wanted to happen. I just want to look at number 3, and not only to help our newest members, but, you know, Joy made a comment about explaining what the different facilities means. And I don't think that the new members, you know, get enough of that. You know, maybe we should put together some of the basic things, explanation of what they are. I don't, you know, it takes a while to keep it all straight. And so maybe we can help them a little bit more. I think if they were more understanding of some of the discussion items, they would be more involved in the discussion itself. So we have a comment from Commissioner Boyce. No. We have a comment from Commissioner Fall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Commissioner Fall. So 2 points of feedback. To Joan's point, I think that is absolutely imperative. I think she nailed it, hit the nail on the head, or hit the head on the nail rather. In getting things like the CIP maybe out to the new members so that they can actually read it, as well as explanation of the tip, and some of the things that we've gone over with the Old Town standards and so on, so that they can see it before we dive into conversations that focus on those documents, and so that way they have some familiarity before they get bombarded with a packet. I think that would be great to be proactive. And then my second point of feedback on number 2, the virtual format, I think they're absolutely outstanding. I love the virtual format. I think it's also important, though, that we have some time to be able to meet each other in person, and that way we can build a camaraderie with the new members as well. But I really like the virtual feedbacks, or the virtual meetings, so I think they're awesome. And I think Kristen's doing a fantastic job, by the way. Thank you. Hats off. I know that's a lot of work too, especially answering our questions and going through the slides and all the prep work. The quality workmanship from you is outstanding, I think, and I think you're doing a great job in helping PPC.
Thank you.
I think I will miss Andrea when she is off doing her real job and not part of our discussion. I found that I enjoyed listening to the way she presents and her knowledge of the different things that we talk about. So
I second that.
You all are too kind. Thank you very much. I know Kristen and I both appreciate it, so thank you. But what else can we do better?
I think I've lost. I have a comment from Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you, Chair Probola. Commissioner Voice here. Thank you, Deputy Administrator Snyder, and thank you, Senior Planner Leeson. I think I got everybody. So there's a lot of things I think as far as this discussion that I think are going well, and I think they should also be pointed out. The targeted packets and the agendas that you guys, I think, have been putting out now for about 6 months are very helpful. I enjoy actually reading them. I believe in 2018, they were a little bit less focused, kind of to Ms. Snyder's point. You get these big packets of paper, and again, the conversation would kind of go here and there, and I don't think we need any help doing that part of it, but it's helpful when we have these little sublines that kind of point us in the right direction, what you guys are actually looking for, what the council's looking for. So I applaud that. I think that's a great addition to these agenda items and agenda packets. The other thing I would say is the context and history, and tonight Senior Planner Leeson did a great job with that. So giving us context, giving us history of why we're discussing certain things. It's not only helpful for new members, it's helpful for me, and I know it's helpful for all the people that are watching us. So it takes a brief minute, but just explaining why we're going through the docket process, what it actually means, is incredibly helpful. And again, it doesn't need to be a long presentation about it, but just the context right there. And that's something I've seen really step up in the last month, maybe 2 months. So that is fantastic. So kudos for both points. And then I also appreciate Ms. Snyder, Deputy Administrator Snyder's point as far as checking in. It doesn't need to be a quarterly thing, and I think we talked about this privately, but checking in and seeing kind of where we're at and how we're all doing, I think that's important for the health of any type of organization. So I applaud you, Ms. Snyder, for doing that earlier or late last year. So I think those are all great things worthy of commendation. And as far as for our newer members, I think what I did when I started was pretty, I don't know if it was unique, but I had the opportunity to sit with Miss, I'm going to butcher her last name, Miss Hennanen, Trish. I know her as Trish. And that was very helpful for me. And I know you guys took the opportunity to do that recently. So I think I would imagine everybody was very thankful for that. But like I said, I see a lot of common effort to make this a better organization, a better commission. And I think it's part and parcel because of the feedback we were able to give and also from the efforts of staff like yourself. So I'm very pleased, very happy. Thank you.
I have a comment from Commissioner Lewis.
Thank you. Commissioner Joy Lewis here. I'd like to jump on the accolades and support the transition that happened with staff. We were all sad to lose Trish is an understatement, but to say that Kristen's done a wonderful job transitioning is an understatement considering our virtual format. So I want to jump on that bandwagon. I want to say too that when we talk about virtual formats, I think one of the biggest things that we need to think about is changing the way that we communicate what's the city agenda is to staff. To the public, right? So the traditional spaces that we used to have in the neighborhood when walking and discussing, hey, did you know that this is coming up? I'm really petitioning hard because I really want a new sidewalk put in, or these different ways that we used to communicate are changed, right? And in effect, limited. And I would love to see from staff suggestions of how are we getting out information to the public. I know that we have obviously the mandatory things of when we post, we have our city website, but how are we using the new ways we use our public space to really communicate and encourage involvement in what we're doing to be able to draw in more people? I think about one of my favorite local places to go these days, since I don't go anywhere, is the PCC. And we used to always have the wall they would put on that would have the different events and concerts that were happening around the sound. Maybe it's a matter of the graphics department putting up and saying, hey, in the next month, are you interested in what's happening here in this park? Or just finding new ways for people who are having a more limited interaction with their neighbors to still have this forum to be able to know, hey, this is going on. I do care and I want to be able to make my comments. So I think that's an interesting thing. Obviously, the technical hitches have been pretty flawless from staff as far as creating a virtual environment. I think it's how do we create a virtual community that's a discussion that really should be had, as we don't necessarily see a big end in sight, right? To how do we change the way that we are communicating with our constituents, I think is important. As far as onboarding goes, I will say that the best way to dig through this is a big document dump. I know when I joined the now defunct UBDC, I needed to go through, right, the whole development agreement to really give a context. And that gives you the availability to say, hey, why was this done? How was it done? And to really give a perspective. So having those documents available, whether it's a SharePoint or however, of saying, hey, these are the things that you're going to want to know about. I found terribly useful when I came into this role. And I agree, red line documents make a huge difference, right? Reading them in a legislative format is, for me, very easy, crisp, clean. So I like encouraging that. I will say that there is something on improving the themes. Andrea, we talked about this, and you had asked me, do you think it would be helpful to focus the discussion with on the policy questions? And I personally disagreed. I think that when staff gives me a finding of fact, that's exactly what you're asking me to do. So I've never experienced in this particular board that there's been a lack of discussion. I've never found that we are want for questions, or depending what you throw at us, we generally are able to step up and say, hey, let's talk about this. So I would just caution it, right? I don't disagree with it, but I would say that I think that what I don't want to see happen is a pigeonhole, right? What I don't want to see is staff saying, this is exactly what we want to hear about from you. Because I think that can kind of destroy the whole atmosphere that we're bringing, right? We want to create a space for the public to come and discuss what's happening with these code changes. So I just want to add a little bit of caution, whether it's warranted or not. So I do think that we know what you want because you tell us this is what you're voting on, right? Are you gonna put your name to this so we have a pretty clear idea of what it is that you are asking? And I think that's it. I hope that helps actually give a little more feedback on things that can be helpful. And I also want to conclude by just saying that I really appreciated you reaching out. I don't know if this is going to become a regular thing. I recognize we had a really unique year, but when staff has the availability, I think it's great to feel heard. It's great to be able to kind of continue to refine our process. So I really appreciated it, and having it become, whether it's an annual thing or whether it's every 2 years, depending on how appointments change over in the commission, I really encourage it. So thank you.
So I have a follow-up with Commissioner Lewis made a comment of that we as a commission have had no problem discussing and making comments and suggesting things and speaking out. So I just want to make sure that the new commissioners understand their role and help us and continue the great conversations that we've had in the past. So I have a comment from our senior planner, Leeson.
So this is Kristen Leeson, and I actually have a comment and a question. And Commissioner Lewis had just mentioned virtually reaching out to the community. And I did not know that we were doing this, but apparently are. So I just kind of want to get the word out. On February 2nd, I am attending an Old Town meeting. And I was invited to talk about all of the Old Town Code amendments that were approved in July, and then the architectural standards, hoping that those get approved on February 1st, and just to kind of get the word out about that. So I didn't know these were going on, and just thought it's a good thing to know, and keep your eyes open for these events. Another one, my initial question though was, you all have brought up a few times onboarding the new members, and it's really directed to the new members, but would you want to meet, because Commissioner Boyce is right, he did meet with several times with Trish Hanonen when she was here, just to kind of catch up. And would you all like to meet 3 times or so as a group of 3 virtually to take 3 items at a time and say, let's work our way through the weeds of the comprehensive plan and the central Issaquah plan and the Old Town sub-area plan. And then the next time we could talk about the code and why we're updating it and what's going on there, the land use code. And maybe the next time some transportation items, even though we don't get those as much anymore because there's a transportation advisory board, but things that still will be related to our group, or maybe even regional groups, the Puget Sound Regional Council, the Regional Coalition for Housing, those different groups that we talk about all the time, and you all would probably need to know why and how. So is that something that you would want to do, and or commission as a whole? Would you want updates on this kind of stuff? And maybe we at a meeting pick one of those topics and talk about it there.
I think that's a great idea, at a meeting, and take one of the topics that maybe we're not even discussing, but might, filter in, or something that's going on in the city that maybe we should know about in order to comment on what we are supposed to be discussing. I don't see any of the new commissioners on my screen right now, so I don't know if they would be interested in meeting. Can I have a thumbs up or something? Are you guys okay? So that even Jason would like to come as a new member, that he can just sneak in the back door and just be part of the discussion, but limited to Andrea. I assume that it's legal to meet with 3, but no more than 3, right? Okay. So we will somehow, in their spare time, our 2 leaders here will make that happen. So I have a question or a comment from Commissioner Milligan.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Milligan, and I am new, so nobody talked to me about these things before, but I'm glad to participate in the conversation because I'm really excited to be on this commission, and I've served on a few others in the city, and there are things that I have really enjoyed, so I wanted to chime in with those things that I thought were very helpful. And one, and I do want to say at the beginning that everything that people have said already are +1 on all of those. And the thing I wanted to add was that even though I feel like I'm an experienced commissioner, board member, I still benefit every single time when meeting management training is provided. I always need a reminder. I always want to feel as a member of a group that we're all hearing the same instructions at the same time. When we ask questions, when we have discussion, and it not only communicates to us and reminds us of something. This is our volunteer gig. We're doing something else during the day, so it's nice to get that refresher course. But it also helps us get informed at the same time on the same things as the public. Kind of to what Commissioner Lewis was saying earlier, to engage the public in how we do things helps them. So I wondered if that was a plan for when we onboard the new members in May. I can wait for that. But I do think that it's not just for new people, it's for all of us so that we participate in. And it's kind of a bond, it's an agreement. Yes, this is how we're going to run meetings. So that was my contribution. And thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. I think so far so good. I'm very much enjoying it. The meetings are great. Love the online format. COVID or not COVID. I love this. So however you want to do it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask a follow-up question?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. This is Andrea Snyder again. Commissioner Milligan, I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on meeting management. That means, for some that means Robert's Rules of Order. For some that just means talking about agreed upon rules of how we conduct our meetings. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more for me, please?
Thank you. Maybe it's a little bit of a combination of both. The Robert's rules can be done very simply and quickly, and sometimes can be commented on at the beginning of a meeting. We're going to have the public hearing, then the commissioner's going to ask questions, and then they're going to do discussion, then they're going to have a motion, and there's going to be more. That kind of thing helps the audience follow along, as well as setting us up to remind us when we chime in about different things. But then the other is that my experience is that each commission is run a little differently. We have different bylaws. We have different timing for audience comments. And sometimes that's confusing to the public. There was a bit of a kerfuffle in my last commission about whether it's 3 minutes or 5 minutes, that kind of thing. So talking about the differences in what this commission does. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
So I have a comment from Commissioner Carl.
Thank you. This is Janice Carl. First of all, I would like to thank everyone involved, including my fellow commissioners, in providing feedback, in processing the feedback, and in taking it forward in the goodness of heart with which it was offered. And I agree with all of the themes that you presented here in your presentation. I just have a couple of little comments. With regard to the providing points of focus for the discussion, I wholeheartedly think that those will help, especially the newer members of the commission, focus their review of documents and issues and prepare their feedback. But I also agree with Joy's thoughts that those should not be the exclusive purview of comments, that everyone should feel free to raise other issues. But it's nice to know whether you're looking at this from the 30,000 foot or the 10,000 foot level. I also agree that I think the virtual meetings have been fabulous from our perspective, but I do think there's been a substantive challenge with regard to getting public comment into the meetings effectively. A lot of people feeling challenged with all of the on and off buttons for muting and so on and so forth. And even though I like personally virtual meetings, I think it will be much more comfortable for the public if we can get back into the in-person venue as soon as we can. I absolutely concur with Commissioner Lewis's thoughts on encouraging more community public involvement with what we're doing. And I've said several times to a number of people that there's a lot of apathy in the Issaquah population about things that happen at the planning policy level. But once the rubber hits the road and there's something being built down the street from them, it's a huge brouhaha. And they need to understand more that the time to get involved is early. And most importantly, I think, is they need to understand that the city has to make certain decisions, has to set and pursue certain goals because of exactly the reasons that Kristen laid out at the beginning of the meeting tonight, that the Growth Management Act, the state, requires such, and we have to conform with both state goals and county goals for planning and meeting goals for jobs and population. So a lot of people will say, we don't think there should be any more building. We don't need any more people here, really, we don't. But we do. We have to take them, and we have to find a way to make it work in a way for everyone. So I think my point is that if there was some way to facilitate greater education about the planning pressures that the city is under, it could facilitate more public input at this level. And I think that's all I had. Thank you very much.
So I have a comment from Commissioner Monahan.
Thank you, Matt Monahan here. I 100% agree and look forward to attending those more intensive study sessions. On the onboarding piece, I think Kristen has done a great job about pointing, me to the documents that I need to be familiar with. But obviously, reading through, a couple hundreds of pages of code is very different than actually being in an interactive environment where we can talk about not just the what, but the whys. And so I really think that supplemental education will be a huge benefit, at least to me personally, and giving kind of life to these documents that I've already reviewed. So Kristen, thank you for sending them, and thank you for volunteering the time to help us understand the world that you live in every day. So thank you.
So when we're discussing 3 people getting together, especially the newer commission members, would it be at all advantageous to have 2 new members and 1 previously, I don't want to say old, but present members in the discussion? Would that, and it would all depend on the time that anybody has to devote to this, but I think it would be positive to have somebody that actually has gone through it and has asked the questions, not just from a staff perspective, but from a commission perspective. I know I would love to be able to be part of that. Besides the fact I would love to get to know the new members, and I think that would help all of us. We don't get to sit on that big stage at the city hall, but it would, I always have believed that if you know who you're working with and you can understand their comments and where they're going, and you don't do that unless you can actually see them and talk to them and understand them. But I really like this format because when we're in person, I have a hard time controlling you people. You all want to get in there and talk, and now you have to wait till I call on you, and it's awesome. Let me tell you, it's awesome. I have a comment from Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you, Chair Provola. I don't know if I agree with that last comment. As far as the virtual meetings, I think they're going as well as anybody could be expected. I do believe this has been a tremendous tool to be able to have during this challenging year and this challenging time. I have to agree that I think it's important that when we're able and when we're capable, that we do get back into that great stage where we can shout our questions and shout down the chair if need be. Not necessarily because we don't like our chair, we love our chair, but mainly because some of the best things that we've ever come up with happens in that crossfire.
Absolutely.
I do agree. And to Commissioner Lewis's point, I also think, or maybe it was Commissioner Carl's point, but it has been, I think, pretty difficult for people as far as the public to interact with us, although we're all now experts at WebEx. Trying to actually call in and you're watching people struggle with what button to push and people are echoing. It can be frustrating for someone who hasn't been doing this for the last year. So I think we have all seen public comment, public participation drop, even though this format has allowed us to continue our work and to the chair's point, maybe in more streamlined fashion. But I would think that it is important when we can safely to be able to get back to in person. Plus, I do believe it also builds camaraderie. As much as I like seeing you guys on my screen, I'd like to see you guys in person much more. So I know that's going to happen with the governor and the stay-at-home order and things like that as we move into phases. But hopefully, it's something that staff and the administration are already thinking about. I know I'm looking forward to it, and I would hope that the rest of you guys want to see me too. So anyway, that's my piece about the virtual meeting. But otherwise, it has worked really well for us. So
I really appreciate all of you, and I appreciate your comments, and you can be very serious and really dig into things, but I also like the little bit of humor that comes through this. This is a volunteer commission, and it's always nice to enjoy what you're doing. Therefore, you're going to be there at the meetings. You're going to make the comments. You're going to do the homework. You're going to read the 100 pages of code that were presented sometimes. So thank you. I don't see anybody else on the chat. Does anybody else want to make anything, any more comments to Deputy City Administrator Snyder before we move on to the next? Nothing? Except, Andrew, yeah, I was going to come back to you. If you wanted to follow up and make, did you get what you needed? Do you think we need to expand it? Where should we go with from this?
Thank you very much, everyone, for your comments and your feedback tonight, but also in our individual meetings. I think that I have everything that I was hoping to get out of this evening, so my sincere appreciation for that. And with one small caveat, which is that while this check-in point with our commissioners happened, at the end of the year in 2020, I want to make it very clear that I always want to hear from you as to how we can better support you in your volunteering for the community and your service for the community and the decisions that you have to make. This is a very impactful commission, and sometimes you have a really hard task. And so, please don't be shy, don't be afraid about holding us accountable to the things that we said that we're going to do, making sure that we do them. Please don't be shy about offering suggestions for improvements or ideas. Always want to hear that. So just the door is open. I want to make sure that that's clear. All right. Thank you very much.
I think this has been a great discussion. I think everybody would agree that this was something that should have happened, and we're really appreciative for you for bringing this forward. So that's really cool. Thank you. And great presentation and comments. And there will be 150 comments on your email tomorrow from the rest of us. The next thing on our agenda is reports, and is there any reports that we need to discuss?
This is Kristen Leeson, and the only thing I have to report is that I've mentioned it earlier, but the architectural standards are going to City Council for action on Monday, February 1st, and they are on consent agenda. So we'll see how that goes. That's all I have.
So the
only other thing, sorry, one last thing.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The only other thing I wanted to make sure that you're aware of is the electrical vehicle code. That is going back to, I think it was at the environmental board last night. And then I think it has another stop with City Council. I should have let me look this up really quickly because I don't want to give you the wrong information. So it's going to City Council for a study session on February 9th. And just wanted to make sure that we're kind of following the process there. This commission talked about the electrical vehicle code. It's going to come back to you following the City Council conversation. I think Kristen's going to talk a little bit about that future calendar later, but if you wanted to tune in and see how that that policy is developing, we can also, of course, bring back those comments to you when Megan returns to this commission with the electrical vehicle code discussion again, because she will do that following the City Council discussion.
So the last thing in our last meeting, we had asked Kristen to send us an email reminder of 2 meetings. And for the life of me, I don't remember what those 2 meetings were, but I know we didn't get them. One I thought was the Environmental Council, and the other one was, or will be, for the study session on the 1st, or the council meeting on the 1st. Which one is that?
There's a council meeting February 1st.
Okay.
The council meeting you are right, and I apologize. So I will send you the link for the environmental council meeting that happened last night. But the study session is happening on February 9th with the city council.
Okay.
So I can send you the link to that when that comes out, or I can send you the agenda when that comes out. Yeah, but I will send you the link to the meeting that happened last night.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Do you want me to talk about schedule really quickly?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, Deputy Administrator Andrea, sorry.
It's contagious.
It is. She got my February 11th date. So on your calendar right now, we have February 11th as a public hearing for EV, and that's not going to happen. And we're just not ready to schedule a date for the public hearing yet. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but it will come back. And then on February 25th, we are scheduled to talk about the sign code and Title 18. However, that is now going to be a joint meeting with the Economic Vitality Commission on the 25th. So I imagine that will be a very, very long conversation and a good conversation. There will be code to look at that night. And so we will go ahead and probably move the Title 18 overview discussion a little later so that you all could just have all the discussion that you want to have about the signs on the 25th. That's all I have for schedules so far.
I know the next thing on the agenda is public comments, but seeing nobody on the screen to make any public comments, at least I would encourage people in the future. You know, it works both ways for public comment. We might have gotten some people that weren't willing to come to meet us, that are more willing to just be at home and make a comment online. So you get kind of both sides of this. So anyway, there won't be any public comments, but I'd like to know if there's anything that you'd like to discuss for the good of the order. If there's anything else that is on your mind that maybe isn't on the agenda this evening, but you might want to bring up? No? Okay. So hearing nothing, hearing no comments, I'm going to close the meeting at 7:43 and wish you all a pleasant rest of the evening. Thank you for all your comments.
Hey, Kristen.
Good night. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hey, Kristen.